Hello everybody. Thank you for joining today's session. This is the first part of the free training on Network Configuration Manager. So I'm Hemu Lakshmi. I'm a product expert in Network Configuration Manager and I've been with ManageEngine for the last 3 years. I'll be the trainer for you in this session. Let's first see the need for a configuration management tool in a network. So in an ideal organization where there are several network devices, a network admin will be making many changes to the network devices. The growing business needs demand that the configuration changes need to be made frequently and several changes have to be made on a network device on a daily basis. Now there is also the possibility where a network admin might make a change to a network device on which he doesn't have the authority. Now this gives rise to the unauthorized change in that particular device. Now these numerous number of changes and unauthorized changes give rise to possibilities for network issues. Now this is where NCM will help. Now NCM will automate the entire life cycle of configuration management in a network environment. It will take care of configuration changes, configuration backup, upload, while it will also ensure that all your network devices stay compliant to the industry standards. On top of this, NCM will also ensure the security of your network. With that said, let's see the minimum requirements for NCM to be installed in your network. You would need a 2.4 GHz dual core processor, a 12 GB RAM, 50 GB storage. NCM comes with an inbuilt Postgres SQL, but if you would like, you can also use MS SQL. And NCM runs on both Windows and Linux servers. All of these requirements that have been mentioned here is for an environment with 1000 devices. If you have an environment where you have more or lesser than 1000 devices, then you can check the system requirements mentioned here. Also, I would like to tell you that during the course of this session, you can ask your questions in your chat panel. We have a group of product experts here to answer your questions. Now let's go to the agenda of today's training. So first we'll see what is the initial setup that is required for NCM to run in your environment. And then we'll see how to discover devices and how to have device templates. And then we'll see how to apply credentials to these discovered devices. Now we'll see configuration backups and how to upload them. We'll see in detail about change management and real-time change reduction. And the last, we'll see how to be ready and prepared for a disaster. In the initial setup, we'll first see about ports and protocols, the device templates, SNMP profile, device discovery, and the backup credential. Now the ports and protocols. Now these are the basic protocols that are required to install NCM: SSH, SCP, and TFTP. Now these are the ports that need to be free for NCM: 69 for the TFTP, 22 for SSH and SCP, 514 for syslog, 13306 for Postgres database. HTTP is running on 80 default web port. With ports and protocols done, let's go to device template. So what is a device template? Device templates will carry the device specific configuration commands for each configuration task. For example, a particular device template for a specific vendor will carry the configuration commands required to fetch backup of the configuration files, to upload a configuration file, to fetch the hardware details, and to enable and disable syslog change reduction in that particular vendor. So for each vendor, you need a device template that carries the supported configuration commands. Knowing this, in NCM, we have 200 inbuilt device templates which will support 80 different major vendors. So each of this vendor will have several device models and device types which will be covered by the 200 device templates. Now, because of the diversity in vendors in the market, you might have a device that is not listed in the built-in device templates. In this case, NCM allows you to customize your device templates, edit the commands, add, create and clone the device templates so that NCM will support any of the device vendor that you choose to manage. Let me show this to you in the UI. So this is the NCM UI, and in settings, under the NCM tab, you have device templates here. Now these are the list of device templates that are here in NCM by default. You have the option to search for a particular vendor, and once you search that, all the device templates available for this vendor gets listed. Now let's say you have a particular device vendor that is not supported in the default device templates. In that case, you can clone a particular device template, edit the commands and create a new template. Let me show that to you. I'm choosing the Cisco IOS router because the Cisco IOS router will usually have the configuration commands that are ideal for many different device vendors. So here, I'm going to give a different name, and here I can choose the device type, be it a router or a switch or a voice gateway. And here I can edit the configuration commands pertaining to the new device template that I'm creating. So here I have the command for backup of running configuration, backup of startup configuration and so on. I also have the timeout for each of this configuration command to be executed. And here I have the option of selecting the line field for each of the command. Now once I edit all these commands, now you can give the sysobject ID of the particular device that you're trying to add. If you do not know the sysobject ID, you can query the device to find out the sysobject ID by entering the IP address. Now, the particular device template that we just added is listed here. Now in NCM, you can find all of the device templates that you've created in the custom tab for your quick reference. Now there is another way of adding the device template. That is, you can export a particular device template and the XML file of that device template gets stored in your local machine. You can edit the commands in that XML file and import it back into NCM by browsing it from your device. This is another way of adding a device template. Now that we've seen how to add device templates, let's go to device discovery. In NCM, we support SNMP based device discovery where we support SNMP profiles V1, V2 and V3. Now let me explain to you a little bit of what goes on in an SNMP based discovery in NCM. So an SNMP request is being sent from NCM to the device, and in response to the SNMP request, the device sends the sysobject ID to NCM. The discovery engine of NCM then matches the received sysobject ID with the default or custom sysobject IDs already present in NCM. During this matching process, if a match is found, the device is then added and associated to the corresponding device template. Now, if a match is not found, then the device will not be added. Now, this is the process in which NCM does SNMP based discovery of the devices. Now, these are the ways in which you can do the SNMP based discovery. You can have single device using IP address, or you can have bulk discovery using IP range and CSV file import. Let me quickly show this to you in the UI. In settings, in the discovery tab, you have the credentials option. Here, you can add a credential for either SNMP V1 or V2 or SNMP V3. Now, once you create an SNMP profile, it will be listed here. Once you create a profile, you can go to Discovery, where you have the option of adding a particular IP address, which is the single device discovery. Or if you want to have bulk discovery, you can do it with IP range by giving the start IP and end IP. Or you can also have CSV file input. Let me quickly show you an example of adding a web device. So upon giving the IP address, I can choose the SNMP credential and schedule the discovery at my convenient time. Now when you do an SNMP based discovery in NCM, you might face the following error. The device is not responding for SNMP request. This error can be caused because of an incorrect SNMP read community. In this case, you will have to refer to the configuration file of that particular device and check the correct SNMP read community and update the same. Another cause for this could be a disabled SNMP in the device. For this, you will have to manually connect to the device and enable SNMP in that device and then again discover the particular device. Now you have another error that you might face, which is device not added. Now let's say that the SNMP community is correct and the device is also reachable, and in this case if you are not able to add the device, then the cause could be that the sysobject ID is not mapped with a device template. You can fix this by finding the sysobject ID in sysobject ID finder in the settings. Let me show this to you. So in settings, in NCM tab, you have the sysobject ID finder. Here you have all the sysobject IDs listed and the associated device templates. You can search for your sysobject ID here, and if you do not have it in this list, you can add the sysobject ID by giving the IP address, and once you add it here, you can associate it to a template. Now by doing this, you can fix this cause. Another cause could be that the default device template for that particular device does not exist. In this case, you can add the device template by either creating a new one or by cloning an existing device template as shown earlier. If you have any difficulties in doing this, you can contact NCM support and we will be able to help you with the device template. Now, in some situations, some of the device vendors might not support SNMP, and in some organizations, SNMP might be blocked. In that case, you might want to add the devices manually. Now, this is also supported in NCM. You can add the devices manually either as a single device or you can also do bulk addition. In the UI, you have to go to the inventory page, and here you can see that the devices are listed. Here you have the option to add device. Here you can add a single device by giving the IP address, vendor and the device template name, or if you want to have bulk addition, in that case you can have a CSV file import. The format for the content of the CSV file import is specified here, and you also have a couple of examples for your reference. Now that we have discovered the devices into NCM, this is how your inventory page is going to look. Now the next step is to add the backup credentials. Now these are the possible combinations for protocol that you have in NCM. We'll be using SSH, Telnet, TFTP, SCP and SNMP for the backup credentials. Now let's see each of these combinations in detail. So when we use SSH and Telnet protocol, this is how the process works. A communication channel gets established between NCM and Telnet over SSH or Telnet. Now, once the communication channel gets established, the configuration backup commands are being sent from NCM to the device. Once the device receives the configuration backup commands, it sends back the device configuration, which is then encrypted and stored in the NCM database. Now, similarly, for SSH TFTP protocol, the communication channel gets established over SSH or Telnet and the file transfer happens using TFTP. Now, this file is received by the inbuilt TFTP server in NCM and the file is then encrypted in NCM's DB. Now the next protocol is SSH and SCP where the communication channel is getting established over SSH and the file transfer happens over SCP, which is then received by the SCP server and encrypted and stored in the NCM's inbuilt database. Similarly, for SNMP and TFTP, the SNMP request is sent to the device from NCM, and once the SNMP request is received, The configuration file is transferred using TFTP, which is then received by the inbuilt TFTP server and encrypted and stored in the inbuilt database of NCM. Now that we've seen all the protocols that are used to provide credentials, let us see how to provide these credentials. Now the window that you see on the left is the manual login sequence of a particular device, and the window that you see here on the right is the form where you have to apply credentials in NCM's UI. Now, in a network environment where there are several network devices, a network admin might not be aware of all the enable prompts for all of the devices. Now, in this scenario, you can log in manually to the device and identify the enable prompts and all the other credentials and then apply the same in the UI. Now, this is an example where the password and enable passwords are configured. Now, here is another example where the login goes directly to the enable mode. We have another example where the enable prompt is very different from the usual enable prompts that a network admin faces. Here's another example for the directly going into enabling mode. Finally, we have another example. Now, once you give all the credentials, you can test these credentials by giving save and test. Now, when you click on the save and test, what happens in NCM is that NCM applies the credentials that you've just entered and attempts for a file transfer. Now, when the file transfer happens, you might face this possible error where the credentials are valid but the file transfer has failed. So, for the file transfer to happen, the file transfer protocols and the servers have to be started. So, we have to check if the TFTP and SCP servers are in running status. Now, this can be done from within the NCM's console. So, in settings, in NCM, you have NCM server settings. Here you can see the TFTP server and SCP server are mentioned and the running status of these could be identified. So here if you see the status is stop, then you will have to check the corresponding port 69 for TFTP and 22 for SCP. You have to check if the ports are being used by any other application. If they are being used, you have to free up the ports and restart NCM service and check the status again here. So by doing this process, you will be able to identify if the ports and the servers are free for NCM. Another cause could be that the timeout of configuration file size. This could happen because the configuration file size is so huge that the command's timeout has been exceeded. Now this can be edited in the device template of that particular device. This can be done in settings, NCM, in device templates. Here you can edit the commands and the timeout for each of these commands. This can happen when the timeout is too less for the command to be executed. So I'm going to increase the timeout for this particular command so that the file transfer could happen. Here I'm saving the changes that I just made to the device template. Now that you've seen how to add the credentials, let me quickly show you where to add these credentials. So in the inventory page, you have the credentials option where you can apply the credentials. Now here you have the option of choosing the protocol combinations that we just saw. And once you choose the protocol combinations, you can enter the credentials by checking the login sequence as we saw earlier. Now that we've seen the credentials and the possible errors in each of them, the next thing that we can do is configuration backup. So why do you really need configuration backups in a network? So in a vast network where there are several changes happening, there is always a possibility of an error happening and a network issue that arises due to the error. Now when such a scenario happens, it helps if you have the backup of all these configuration files. If you have the latest backup of the configuration, you can restart your network in no time. But if you do not have the configuration backups, then the downtime of your network is going to be so huge that it's going to have a financial cost to your network. Now let's see the different ways in which you can have configuration backup using NCM. You can have instantaneous, you can have real-time change detection and scheduled backup. We're going to see each of these in detail. So in the inventory, you can choose either one device or you can choose many devices. And here you have the option to have a backup of these devices. Now upon clicking, the configuration backup is triggered successfully for these devices. Now this is the instantaneous configuration backup. The next one is real-time change detection. What is a real-time change detection? In a real-time change detection, there is a network device in your network and the configuration manager is going to keep monitoring the particular network device, and when a change happens in that particular network device, the configuration manager is going to immediately detect the change and trigger the configuration backup. Now this is what a real-time change detection does. Now why is this important? Because whenever a configuration change is made, again there is a possibility of having an error. And each of the configuration change has to be backed up so that any of the change being made is being recorded. And you will have the knowledge of all your devices, all the changes that are happening in your network. Now let's see how this works in NCM. So this is the back end of what happens in NCM when you enable the change detection mode. So here, for a particular router, when you enable the change detection, the router is going to start sending the syslog messages for every event to the syslog listener inbuilt in NCM. Now when a user logs into this device and makes a change to the device and logs out of it, the router is going to send this logout message to the syslog server. Here, upon detecting this logout message, NCM is going to trigger a configuration backup of that device. Now, the recent configuration backup of that device is being compared to the latest configuration version that is present in NCM. Now, in this comparison, if a change is detected, the configuration file that has been just backed up is encrypted and stored in the DB. If there is no change detected, then the backed up configuration file is discarded. Now, this is the huge process that goes on in NCM when you enable change detection. In NCM UI, you can enable the whole process in just one click. Here, let me just select a device. Here, I'm showing you the option. Here, you can search for a device and select a particular device. And this is the enable change detection. So this is the syslog based real-time change detection that we are about to enable. So here, the enable change detection is being enabled through syslog. Now when you enable the change detection, there is a possible error that you might face which says we do not support enable change detection for this device. Now this error could arise for a cause where syslog is not supported for a particular model. Now we all saw that the enable change detection works based on the syslog messages that are received from the router. If NCM is not able to support the syslog messages, then you can fix this by connecting to the device manually and executing the syslog enabling commands and then fixing this issue. If you have difficulties in doing this, you can contact the support and we will be able to fix this for you. Now there is another error that you might face that says the change detection is enabled but the change is not actually being detected. The cause for this could be that the ports have been mismatched. For this you need to check the port numbers and the servers if they are correctly connected. Another reason is that the syslog server's running status is being stopped. Now as we saw earlier in settings in NCM, you have NCM server settings. Here, you have the list of NCM servers where you also have the syslog server and the status of that particular server is shown here. If this status is stopped, then you will have to check the port number 514 and free up this port and restart the service and check the status again. By doing this, you can fix this cause of the syslog server and this error will be corrected. Now that you've seen the real-time change reduction, let's go to scheduled backup. So why do we have to have the scheduled backup? There is one reason where you cannot depend on syslogs all the time. In that case, you can have scheduled backup and you can schedule the backup devices that you execute routinely. So for this, we have the options where you can schedule monthly, weekly, daily and hourly. Let's go to the UI for this. In inventory, here you have the option to select any number of devices and here you have the schedule option. So here I'm just giving some name for the schedule and here I can select any of the notifications and here there is the option to select more devices. You can also select particular device groups and here you can enter the email address to which you would like to receive notifications regarding this schedule. Here you have the option you can select the schedule to execute this schedule. Now the schedule has been added successfully. Now when you add schedule, there are some errors that you might face. The schedule might fail when a few of the devices fail for backup in the schedule that you're trying to run. The reason for this is that the overall schedule execution time exceeds 5 minutes. In NCM, we have a default setting of 5 minutes for every schedule execution. Now you just have to increase this execution time in system properties to correct this issue. Now, the other reasons are that when you execute more than 500 devices per schedule, then that execution time might exceed 5 minutes. So, that can also be a cause. Another cause is that you need to have 30 minutes time difference between two scheduled run times. Now, if the time difference is less than 30 minutes, that can also cause an error. Now, another cause could be that a particular device credential is incorrect. Now, this happens when you schedule backup for, say, 100 devices and one of the devices has incorrect credentials. In that case, the backup for that particular device might fail. Now, let's see where you can see this error in the UI. So, here, under the Operations tab, you will be able to see the failed ones. Now, the reason for this is that the credentials have been changed. After you set the credentials could have been changed by any other network admin. So it makes you can ensure by checking the credentials one more time. The other reason, as we saw earlier, the ports could be blocked or the servers have not been started yet. So you can correct this from NCM server settings. Another reason could be a huge configuration file for which you need to correct the timeout settings in the device template. Now the last cause could be unsupported backup commands. For this you need to correct the device template, or if you do not have the correct device template, you can create a device template with the supported backup commands. Now that we've seen the configuration backup and the different ways in which you can execute them, let us move on to change management. Change management, we will be talking about change tracking, versioning and history and comparing the configurations. Change management is very crucial in network configuration management because changes are the place where there is a loophole to create a network issue. Now, when a network admin keeps track of all the changes, he can ensure the security of the network. So we'll be seeing about all the changes that have been made in a particular device and the version increment for the changes that are happening and full details about who made a change and what change they made and when exactly they made that particular change. And we'll be able to see the configuration change trend for that device. And you'll also see the modified lines and deleted and added lines for that device. For this, let's go to the inventory. You have the changes for this. Here, you can go to the snapshot page. Here in snapshot page, you can see all the recent changes listed here. So this shows the timestamp, which tells you when exactly this change has happened. And it shows you which version this is. And it shows you who made the change and what was the configuration type, whether it was a running configuration or a startup configuration. And it also shows you the change type, whether it was an unauthorized change or an authorized change. Now let's drill deep into a particular change. Here you can see the modified lines. Here this is a line that has been modified in this particular version. Now here you will also be able to see the configuration change trend. Now this graph shows you the number of configuration changes that has been made in this particular device along with the date in which it has been made. So this gives you an idea of how frequent changes are being made on this particular device. So based on this information, you can increase the security of this particular device. It also color codes, which means that these changes are unauthorized changes and these are the authorized changes. Now the other thing that you can do with change management is compare the configurations. Now this is a crucial thing that you could do with NCM because this helps in troubleshooting when there is a network issue. One of the scenario is you can compare different versions of the same device. For example, let's say that a particular device has started malfunctioning suddenly. Now this gives the idea that there could be some change that caused an issue in that particular device which makes that device to malfunction. Now you can compare different versions of the particular device to identify the exact configuration change that has made the network issue. The other scenario is to compare configuration two different network devices and identify the differences in their configurations and to fix an issue. Let us see where this is done. In inventory, in the changes tab, here you have the diff view tool. Here you can select any device and you can choose either the running or the startup configuration. And check for the changes. Now for this device, there is only one line that has been modified. You have the option of viewing all the lines of the configuration files or just the differences. So now we've seen how you can compare configurations of two different devices. With that, let us go to disaster recovery. So what amounts to a disaster in a network? It could be a network outage, it could be a security breach, or it could be a performance degradation. Any of these could cost the business dearly. It could have a financial cost to your business. Now, in times of disaster, let us see how NCM helps you to be prepared. By having a baseline configuration, by having the synchronization of startup and running configurations, by having change notifications enabled and rollback options, and by having export configuration option and upload draft. Now let us see each of these in detail. Baseline configuration. What exactly is a baseline configuration? So we all know that a particular network device will have several versions of the configuration file. Out of all of these versions, one of the version will be the best working configuration file. Now, when that particular device malfunctions, you can immediately fix that device by uploading the baseline configuration. Once you upload the baseline configuration, the device will start working perfectly. Now, after you upload the baseline configuration, you can go on to troubleshoot and find the root cause of the issue. But if you do not have the baseline configuration label, then you will have to spend time in finding out the configuration version that will work properly. Now, this will increase the downtime of that particular device. NCM helps you avoid such scenarios by helping you label baseline configuration. In the inventory, in devices, you can choose a particular device. Here you have the option to label the configuration. Here you can label it as baseline, or if you have some other name that you would like to give based on the changes that you've made, you can do that as well. So I'm going to select baseline for this device. Now what this action does is it labels the current startup and running configuration of this particular device as baseline. So now let's say this device has started malfunctioning. Now all you have to do is select the device and upload the baseline configuration. Here you can see the corresponding baseline configurations. Now when you do this, you might face the possible error where we do not support upload feature for this device. This could be caused due to protocol mismatch. Here we know that a configuration upload needs a file transfer protocol. So when you choose the credential for a particular device, you will have to choose a file transfer protocol. The Telnet or SSH protocol will not support upload. Let me quickly recall where you can apply the credentials. So here in the credentials, you can choose the right protocol for configuration upload. By doing this, you can fix this error. Another cause could be that even when you're using the specified protocol, the NCM device template might not have the upload commands for that specific device. For this scenario, you will have to edit the commands in that particular device template, or you can create a new device template. For this, if you need support, you can contact NCM support and we will help you with this. Another possible error is the upload failure. This could happen when the command has timed out, which you can fix from the device template command settings. And other error could be because of the running status of TFTP and SCP servers. This again you can correct in the NCM server settings as we've seen earlier. So let's move on to startup and running synchronization. So as a network admin, you would know that every network device will have a startup configuration and a running configuration. It is crucial that both of these configuration files remain in sync. Now let's take a scenario when a network admin makes a change on a particular device. Now this change is being made on the running configuration file. Now once he makes a change on the running configuration file, he has to write the same changes on the startup configuration file as well. If the network admin forgets to do this and the device reboots, then it will reboot only with the startup configuration file. Essentially, the device will lose all of the changes made in the running configuration. This will create loopholes for security issues where the network device can reboot with a lot of issues. NSYM helps you fix this by detecting whenever there is a conflict between the startup and running configuration files, and you can also sync the configurations remotely from NSYM. Let me show this to you. So here you can see that the conflict has been detected. Now upon clicking that, you will be able to identify what are the changes in between the startup and the running configuration files. Now once you see this, you can select that particular device, and here in the options, you can sync the particular configuration. Now, the configuration synchronization operation is being executed. Now, what this does is it copies the running configuration over to the startup configuration file. Now, when you do this, the possible error is that a change happens, but NCM does not detect the conflict in real time. Now, the cause could be that the real-time change detection is not enabled. We all know that for NCM to detect the changes in real time, the syslog-based change detection has to be enabled. So, uh, all you have to do is enable the real-time change detection to fix this issue. But to enable the change detection, the syslog has to be supported. So if the syslog is not supported, then NCM will detect this conflict in the next successful scheduled backup or manual backup operation. Let's go to change notification and rollback. As a network admin, it is very difficult for you to manage several devices in your network. In this scenario, you will not be able to log into each device and check for the changes that are being made. As a network admin, you would prefer the notifications to reach you rather than the other way around. So in NCM, we have push notifications for all the changes that happen in your network devices. Now, these are the ways in which you can configure the changes. It could either be an email or an SNMP trap, a trouble ticket, or a syslog message. We also have the advanced feature of rollback. Let us quickly see this. In settings, in NCM, you have change notifications. So here, I'm going to create a notification profile, and here I'm going to give the criteria for the configuration that I would like to receive the notification. So I would like to receive a notification for running configuration when it is an unauthorized change. Once I enable the notification, I can have emails notified to my email ID, or I can have the rollback version. Here, I can select it to be either rolled back to previous version or to the labeled version. Now what this does is, whenever a change happens to a device, NCM immediately reverts back that change by rolling back the configuration file to either the previous version or the labeled version. The main feature of this rollback is that it eliminates the need for the physical presence of a network admin in times of a disaster. So, when a change happens in a crucial device where a network admin does not want any change to happen, he can configure this rollback for that particular device. With the rollback done, we have to associate the notification profile to the device groups. It can be done from the same window. Now that we've created the particular profile, I can associate it to the devices, either to the specific devices or to device groups. Once I do this, the device groups will all have the configuration, the change notification associated. Now that the rollback is done, let's go to export configuration. We have seen all of the disaster scenarios that could happen in your network devices, and we have also seen the disaster scenarios in your network. Now we are going to see the worst case scenario where what happens when the database of network configuration manager crashes. Now this is the worst case scenario that could happen, but NCM has an idea for that as well. With NCM, you can export the configurations in readable format to your local or shared storage, and you can also schedule this operation. Now with this, even if the NCM's encrypted database crashes, you will still have all the configurations backed up in a readable format in your shared storage. Let me show this to you. So in NCM, you have the export configuration where you have the option to schedule it for never, daily, weekly or monthly. You can also give the destination path to where you would like it to be stored. Now with this, Let me wrap up this part 1 of this session and let me introduce you the part 2, which will happen on the next Tuesday, that is the 30th of January, in the same time 11:30 a.m. EST. In this training, we'll be seeing about how to schedule several other configuration tasks. We'll see how to execute the configlets and we'll see about how to stay compliant to several industry standards. We'll also see how to have full control on the network changes that happen. And at last, we'll also see about how to be ready for the audit with the reports. With that said, you can always contact me through the email ID or you can raise your questions in the forum. Now I'm handing over the session to the product expert who will be answering your questions.
Hi, my name is Kanagaraj. I am working this product for last 8 years. Now we move to the question answer session. What is mean by device template? We use device template to back up the configuration file. In Network Configuration Manager, we do support major AT vendors and we do support major 200 device templates. Like Cisco is a device vendor and Cisco IOS switch, IOS router is a device template. And changed by name not available in the config file. Uh, if you do a manual backup or if you do a schedule backup, that changed by name will not be captured in configuration file because we get the change by name by the syslog messages. The syslog logout message contains the changed by name along with the IP address. We get the changed by name from the syslog logout message. And what is mean by authorized changes and unauthorized changes? If you do any changes using Network Configuration Manager tool, that changes are marked as authorized changes. Like if you upload the draft or if you execute configlets or if you upload the configuration file, that changes are marked as authorized changes. If you do the changes outside the network configuration manager, that changes are marked as unauthorized changes. Like if you connect the putty and make some changes, or if you connect the device using web client and if you make some changes, NCM detect those changes, that changes are marked as unauthorized changes. How to change the unauthorized changes to authorized changes in network configuration manager? I will show it in a web GUI. If you go to inventory tab and changes tab, here you can select the config versions and here you can change to authorized changes. Here you can put the command and if you click save, that unauthorized changes change to authorized changes. How to search a particular string in the entire configuration file? For example, if you want to search a particular SNMP string configured on all your devices present in Network Configuration Manager. In this case, we have provided a global search. If you go to inventory, here we have a search icon. Here you can search the command string like public, and if you hit enter, it will list you which are the device contains that public community string. And another question is how many configuration versions are stored in Network Configuration Manager? We don't have any limitations to store the configuration file inside the Network Configuration Manager. You can store n number of configuration versions in Network Configuration Manager. How to create a SNMP profile? Like you have added 100 of devices, all the devices using the same credential, login credential. In this case, you don't need to go each and every devices and provide the login credential. Instead of providing manually, you can create a credential profile and you can associate the credential profile to bulk devices. I will show you how to create a SNP credential profile. You just go to settings and go to NCM. Sorry, go to discovery. Here we have credentials. Here we have two credentials. One is monitoring credential and backup credentials. In the monitoring credentials, you can create the SNMP credentials to discover the network devices. In backup credential, you can create a credentials to backup the devices. You can click add credential. You can provide the credential name, credential profile name, description, and provide the telnet credential and SNMP credential. And you can save the profile, credential profile, and you just go into inventory. You can select the bulk devices. You can select the bulk devices and click the credential icon, and you can provide the credentials. The next one is how to update the host name and IP address in a bulk. Like if you add the devices into network configuration manager using add device option or import device option, the network configuration manager add the devices with the device IP address. If you want to update the host name in a bulk way, you just go to inventory. You can select all the devices. You can click the credential. You can click the action button. There you can find the update host name option. In the update host name option, we have two options. You can update the host names using DNS server, or you can use flat file to update the host names. And how to manage and unmanage the devices. Like instead of deleting the devices from network configuration manager, you can unmanage the devices from network configuration manager. Once you unmanage the devices, it's act as a dummy device. None of the operations perform on the unmanaged devices. You can go to inventory and you can select the devices, which are the devices you want to unmanage, and you can click the action icon and you can click the unmanage icon to unmanage the devices. How to create a dynamic group? You can go to inventory. There you have find a groups. You can click the groups. There you have an option to add a device group. Once you click add a device group, there are two options are present there. You can select the devices and you can create a device group, or you can select a criteria. Like you can, for example, if you want to create a device group based on the device vendor or a device model or a series number or a device template, you can. We have a lot of credentials there. You can use the criteria to add a device groups. These are the major questions asked in this session. We will see you on the next session on next week. Thanks for joining the meeting session. Bye.